If you're old enough to remember all the hope and hoopla that came with the debut of St. Louis Center, then you might also remember the unusual contest they held tied to the mall's grand opening in 1985. The purpose of the competition was to find someone to model for a statue representing the typical St. Louisan. But as our newest contributor to Living St. Louis, Paul Schankman, shows us, the woman they found was hardly typical then or now.
Most everyone knows where to find this statue of the ultimate representative of St. Louis, but hardly anyone knows about this statue meant to represent the typical St. Louisan. It depicts a woman sitting cross-legged writing a poem. This poem.
The diagnosis was cancer on May 22nd, 1983. Here I still am, alive and well. Who'd have thought it could be? Seems I am the survivor type. That's why the statue should be me.
Her name is Julie Wier, and that 6-line poem about facing her own mortality has granted her a kind of immortality, thanks to a 1984 contest tied to the opening of a new downtown mall called St. Louis Center. The mall was looking for someone to be the subject of a statue representing the typical St. Louisan.
The Globe Democrat and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch had examples that people had sent in. Things like, I should be chosen as the typical St. Louisan because I'm 18 and I've eaten at Ted Drew's my whole life, which is certainly way up there. But I felt like there was a little more to it than that. So I entered with my silly poem.
A silly poem about something very serious.
I went to the emergency room on the baby's first birthday, and they told me that I had 6 months to live. They did a chest x-ray. They told me the tumor in my chest was the size of a football, and to get my affairs in order, I would be dead by Christmas.
The news was devastating, especially since Julie and her husband Jack had 6 kids, 2 of them with special needs. Fortunately, chemotherapy and radiation sent her cancer into remission.
The reports of my death were greatly exaggerated.
And it was the year after she beat cancer that she beat 500 other applicants, all hoping to be chosen as the typical St. Louisan, despite the fact she lived in Fairview Heights, which made her selection slightly controversial.
We are not typical in any way, ever. My children are not typical. I'm not typical. Jack's not typical. But we love St. Louis.
Soon after winning the contest, Julie Wier's Bronze Age began with a trip to Nantucket to pose for the artist J. Seward Johnson, famous for his realistic sculptures of everyday people placed in everyday settings. The bronze shoes at the base of the statue are the actual shoes Julie wore to Johnson's studio.
I asked them how much the statue weighed because I wanted to be able to tell all of my friends that I know how much love weighs. It weighs 500 pounds because this is my symbol of love for all of you, for everything that you did for our family when I was desperately sick, very sick.
The statue, which is officially titled Competition, used to sit here near the corner of 6th and Washington when St. Louis Center used to sit right there. But after the mall went under, the statue went into storage.
In 2008, it was bought by Chesterfield Arts and relocated at the entrance of the Saks branch of the St. Louis County Library in Chesterfield. Today, the real Julie also lives in West County.
If I were still in Illinois, I would probably not come visit her very often. But because I'm in Wildwood, I have an opportunity to show up here once in a while and just be with her.
So what has this typical St. Louisan been doing for the past 3 decades? Well, nothing typical.
Pebbles. Pebbles.
For the past 15 years, Julie has been rescuing and raising llamas and alpacas. About 5 years ago, she even learned how to turn their fiber into clothing. And she went on to get a college degree in communications, graduating at the age of 40.
And my husband said to me, now that you've graduated, what would you like to do? And I said, I would like to be a professional clown. And of course he thought, you know, and I was. So for 15 years, I was Simple the Clown, and she was awesome.
It's been a great ride for the last 47 years.
But in 2007, Jack Wier almost died. He'd been using a bobcat to clear some trees when a large limb snapped and impaled him.
The branch came up underneath the roll bar that sits here in the bobcat and drove into my abdominal wall, and it stopped what they told me at the hospital, 5/16 of an inch from my spine.
Paramedics took Jack to the hospital with the limb still inside him, although they had to use a chainsaw to shorten it from 8 feet to 3 feet so they could fit him into the helicopter.
They opened the door and all these interns are there with their cell phones. They're all snapping pictures, and this one guy's on the phone. He says, "You got to come down here. This guy's got a tree in him and he's still talking."
If Jack and Julie's life sounds like it has the makings of a country western ballad, you are not alone.
6 kids, 6 months to live. She had the strength for 12 grown men.
The song is called Built to Last. It was written and recorded by Jack and Julie's son, Don.
She was built to last.
Alpaca!
By any objective standard, calling Julie Wier atypical anything seems
Oh, it
preposterous.
smells like llamas and alpacas.
But maybe what the contest judges saw in her life story was the sort of unsinkable determination we'd like to believe lives somewhere in all of us.
I come back here and sometimes just need to be with her to remind myself of what I've overcome, of how far I've come, and that I need to keep moving ahead one step at a time. She gives me inspiration and hope. You know, I go there and I get hope. I get hope that I'm still here, I'm still fighting the good fight. I'm alive. I'm alive, and you know, I'm not what I used to be, but I'm a lot wiser than I used to be.